So welcome to the Berlin chapter's lunchtime event with our speaker, Magda Zochowska. We're really excited to dig into this topic and talk about a subject that likely a lot of us here have some experience in dealing with, how product and community overlap and how we can work better together. And I think today we actually have brand new faces here in the chapter event. So it's really great to see that. Welcome and thanks for coming. So my name is Joanna Buchmeyer and I'm the chapter director along with Jen Serrat. She is in the chat somewhere. She'll probably show her face at the end. And we are the Berlin CMX chapter. So for those of you that are new or don't know what CMX is, it's a professional community for community builders, and it lives on Slack and Facebook. And if you're looking to get involved, I would highly suggest joining. It's a really great place to meet other community builders or community adjacent people and also gain insights on industry. So a few housekeeping things. This will be a conversation with Magda, so please don't be shy to ask questions in the chat throughout the talk in the chat box, just like you're doing now. And Jen will collect any questions at the end and we'll try to answer them, assuming we have some minutes at the end. So and just to get started, I already did this prompt, but if there's anyone that's new that's joined, just throw in the chat something that you'd like to learn from this talk. And then also, if you want to share what you had for breakfast again this morning, that would be great too. It's just a little fun question to ask. So, in the future, to find out about more events, you can join our chapter page, or you can, follow Jen or myself on LinkedIn, because we always post when we're having events. And we're also always looking for speakers and topics. So if you have anything in mind or you'd like to volunteer to talk about something, please let me know. I think it would be really great to involve more people. So don't be shy. And this is going to be recorded, as I mentioned. So if you'd like to share or rewatch afterwards, you can do that. So let's get started with our lovely guest, Magda. She's a former community manager turned product manager and a budding surfer. But I will let her say a little bit more about herself. Magda, would you like to give us an introduction?
Hi, thanks, Joanna. Hi, everyone. Excited to be here, and thanks for the invitation, Joanna. A little bit myself. My name is Magda. I'm a product manager. Originally, I'm from Poland, and I'm based in Berlin, where I live and work since nearly 10 years. I'm currently in Poland. I'm not in Berlin. As you can see, this is my parents' place, my high school room. No surfboards here, unfortunately. So my background and the reason why I'm here today is community management. So before I get there, maybe about my transition path from community manager to product manager, I think it's also important to mention or share what kind of communities and products I build. So basically, I specialize in online learning communities and building online learning platforms for those communities. But usually when I say I work in online education, people think, Duolingo, learning languages and so on. And I say, well, no, I've actually never worked in language apps. So the core of the kind of didactic concept of the platforms that I built, and also companies I work with as a community manager back in the days, was kind of the spirit of project-based learning and cohort-based learning. And what it actually means is that people learn together. So when you join a program or a course, you're grouped in a team or a cohort, and then you have a project to solve and to kind of deliver at the end together with your team. And this is actually how you learn. So you learn with each other and from each other. And so, as you can imagine, it's kind of quite challenging. I think we all remember from school, nobody really liked group work, and people were always frustrated that somebody doesn't do enough and I do all their job and so on. So that was kind of the role of a project manager, of a community manager for me at the beginning, kind of help people stay motivated. So that's why also throughout my career, I mostly work with B2B products and companies rather than B2C. So usually we have a client coming in with their own community, and our job was to keep the community active and engaged, but not really to grow it anymore. So so I'm that's why also when I transitioned into product, I also transitioned into products where the community will be like already be there because it's B2B, and the job was to just work on retention and engagement. So that's kind of the nutshell.
Cool. Okay, great. Yeah. And actually, Magda and I worked together at one of these said educational companies at Udacity. So, I mean, I got to see firsthand, like, I really felt like you had a different approach in some ways to building communities. And it was, I think I learned a lot from working with you, like the way that you, I would say, like, did a lot of education and how structured you were. So, yeah, I mean, I think you'll dig into that a little bit more,
Yeah.
but first, I guess for those of us who don't know, or maybe some of us do, but can you just say in a couple of sentences what exactly a product manager does?
Yeah, so I love that question. It's like a bittersweet actually feeling, because usually when I'm asked what product manager do, first I roll my eyes and I'm like, okay, how much time do you have to hear the answer? Because it's not really easy to say. And so because when we say, what product managers do, we build software, and then people are like, how come? I mean, we know software engineers, they code, so they build the software, and then designers design. So what do PMs do? And then usually, I was actually curious to see if there's like a one sentence definition of a product manager job. So I asked ChatGPT to give me that, and the chat said, I have annotated it here. A product manager oversees the development, strategy, and life cycle of a product, collaborating with cross-functional teams to ensure its success in the market. So if I would hear that definition, as somebody who doesn't, is not in tech or doesn't work with product teams, you would have lost me after like third word. I'd be like, okay, I don't follow. And I think like this is what the definition, this is type of the definition that people actually very often get and hear and read about, and then it doesn't really, it says everything and nothing in a sense. So like to give you, I guess, like a 3-sentence definition of a product manager work, at least like my definition of it is, I would say product manager is somebody that it's a type of a project manager at the end. I think PMs will hate it when I say it like this, but actually it is like that, So PM it's a project manager, is a type of a project manager, but the difficulty is that you have to come up with your own projects, and this is the part of the strategy and the vision and all the planning and the road mapping that you always hear about. So this is deciding what projects to do and then when. And this is actually quite difficult because you have to see what kind of resources you have available, and also what will be the impact of the project. And you always have to have in mind what you want for your users and for the business. And ideally, everyone is happy and is active, and then there's revenue coming and users are active, and the world is an amazing place, which is very difficult to achieve. This is the goal always, this is where we want to be. Yeah. And so this is one part of it. It's a lot of planning and measuring the impact of what you're doing, which also I think is true for community managers and their work. And then, but like a part of it, I would say product managers, what they really, because you often hear like, oh yeah, you have to have like a good set of soft skills. And then because at the point, like the point is you have to get buy-in from a lot of stakeholders. I know community managers also have to do it. But I think, a different type of buy-in, because there's a lot of, very often you actually require a lot of resources for your decision, So the buy-in has to come from everywhere. And even once you got the buy-in, people have to really, 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 so all your stakeholders and the team that you work with, so your team, software engineers and designers, but also, external stakeholders, like, I don't know, sales team, marketing team, legal team, and all the leadership, like they really have to believe in what you decided to build. And so you have to be really like evangelize the product, and people really have to believe that it's gonna make an impact, but also they have to really understand what we're all doing here, because this is what the issue I've seen throughout, like basically throughout my career so far. Very often the main problem in companies is not that there is no product market fit, or users are not active, or whatever. The problem is the vision is not clear, So what you want in your company or whatever you're doing, you want to be in a situation when you wake up, anyone working on the company, middle of the night, and you ask them what the company does, and they should be able to answer it in one sentence. And you can ask me, like my first company, so I would say that would be tricky, Everyone have their own definition sometimes of what we are trying to achieve as a company. So where is the mission and vision? So I think this is also the kind of the job of product manager, to push for that, and then make sure that everyone understands what we're doing here, and because then, very often, for example, software engineers, they have to build the software, and you as a product manager have to really be able to answer all the questions about the software, what the software is supposed to do, what we want to achieve. But ideally in a situation when software engineers can often actually don't even have to ask you sometimes about stuff, because since they know what the mission and the vision, they can already answer those questions by themselves, So at the end, you're also like a middleman. So sometimes, we have teams, I had it in the past when the design was not very collaborating well with the engineering. So then, engineers get the mock-ups and they have to build them, and they just decide to just skip part of the mock-up, and they're like, we just don't build it and don't communicate it back, So then design gets frustrated. Engineers and then it fires back to engineers. They get frustrated, so there's like a lot of communication issues. So your job as a product manager is to be in the middle, and then make sure everyone is happy and works smoothly and communicates well, So I do anticipate even the tensions before it even arises, And my previous job, actually my last job, I was very lucky, so I didn't have to be the middleman, because the engineering and design were perfectly fine. But I think also it's because they were already senior, and they were, I would say, like mature, like people in their professions, So they were, when they had questions, when something was not clear, they would just ask, there was no this, they were intimidated or something else. They would just ask, So I think also depends on really the team that you work with.
Yeah, I mean, I think, thanks for that answer. And I think, as you're talking, I just was myself thinking there's so many similarities between being a product manager and a community manager. So, and especially from someone who's done both roles, like, I guess, what would you say are some of the similarities, and what do you think, what skills are kind of transferable from being a community manager to a product manager? And the reason why I ask that is just so I think there can be much more, understanding and synchronicities going on between both parts of the organization. So yeah, like, what do you think the similarities are?
So love that question. I would say actually there's way more similarities that you would think. There's also a lot of differences, but I think in general there's way more similarities. And I think it starts from like, what is the mindset of a product manager and what is the mindset of the community manager? Because ideally, both cases, like you everything you do comes from the empathy to the user. Because as a product manager, you're solving problems for the users, and your goal is to keep users happy, engaged, and active. But also, you solve their problems, so you want to be close to them and you care about them. And it's the same for the community managers. At least, I work I was not a type of community manager where. So I didn't, we even work with social media, So we usually had the community that was living on the online learning platform, or we used Slack, like in case of Udacity. So, and our users were, like, they were not our customers, So it's a bit different, I would say here, but at the end, it's still, you still want to solve their problems and you want to be close to them. So I would say this is the first kind of very, very important, and I think people often don't really talk about it, or it's kind of avoided. And I remember even my first job as a community manager, I was working with a colleague, also a community manager, and this colleague will, I heard a couple of times saying that users don't, because we had to tell users that we had to solve their problems or help them to get from one point to another point of the on the online learning platform. Often, for example, they had to upload projects and something will crash and they missed the deadline and they think they're already out and they cannot fix that problem and so on. So my mindset was, okay, that means maybe we have to change the way the button, maybe the button to upload the work should appear a bit earlier, or there should be some information on the button saying something, but my colleague was saying, oh, these users are so stupid. And I thought, oh, okay, I guess like if you come up with that mindset, I think they're not a good fit to be a product manager and also to be a community manager, So this is, for me, it's very important where you kind of come from in your heart. But also when it comes to like practicalities, I think that's also, Joanna, what you already mentioned about being structured.
Yes.
Because Udacity was really funny because I was the one that came up with a beautiful Excel sheet to track of our initiatives and then measure the impact of initiatives and so on. But because this is what you do, and as a community manager, you measure everything you do. you need to measure it. And with product management, it's exactly the same. You have to measure it.
Mm-hmm.
The difference here, and I think it's more challenging for CMs, is that very often there's things like it's hard to measure certain things, because from my experience as a PM, like it's very clear because you measure how the features are performing. It's quite easy. But with PMs, how you measure people's, how they feel on a certain day, or what's their satisfaction, or what's their frustration. You can of course ask them, you can do surveys, but some things are just not so easily measurables. So this is definitely like one of the key aspects of both kind of professions. I think also the overlap is definitely on the like goals or like things that you have to actually have to deliver, which is very often retention and high engagement. Very often for learning platforms or platforms in general, or like any digital software that is open, you need engagement. You need people to be doing what you want them to do. I think also the overlap is on the, for example, the kind of the cross-functional work. So you have to work with many departments, so at least you need to understand what they're doing. I will also say something that you, Joanna, mentioned. So experimentation spirit.
Yes.
So that's also something that is now coming up and becoming more, I think, like product people are starting, like experimentation now is the thing in product management, which I think it's a bit more challenging because, the CMs usually work with the no-code tools. So you already use the tools that are already there. When it comes to product manager, you have to build them, so, and then if you fail, okay, it's like all this work where, no one say for nothing, it never goes for nothing, but it's more painful when you fail, and you fail a lot, because that's the point of experimenting. And I think maybe like what else is similar between those two in those two professions is I'd say communication. So you have to write a lot. I think also people don't really speak about it when it comes to at least product management, that you have to write documentation, then you have to keep your stakeholders informed, and that's also often happens in the form of emails. You have to send a product newsletter to C-levels, because nobody from management is gonna, like nobody has time, so you have to be very, very also versatile in terms of how you communicate in writing, which is also the case for community managers, I know. Yeah. And I guess maybe the last thing that I would say is very, very similar is something also I feel like people don't really talk about enough, is the creativity, because I would say my experience as a community manager required a lot of creative thinking for me in terms of finding ways to solve those problems that I identified, and then how to do it with the scarce resources we had. And then especially I think what I sometimes miss about working with communities is that they're so active and they change so much, and they respond really fast to any change that you do. So, and they always change, it's never like the communities I work with at Udacity, even when we were working there, I'm sure everyone is different now. Like it's different ways. There's different ways to motivate people. Also, because I think like now there's, this whole move towards social media, and then running communities on social media also change actually the way people interact with you as a community manager. So I would say, this was really cool as a community manager with product. It's a bit different, but you also have to be crazy creative because users are also changing, So I would say, that's the overlap side here.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I mean, I think it's also really nice to hear the things that you do with both, because like for at least one of the reasons why I thought this topic would be really interesting was to understand better how both parts of the organization can work together. And I think one thing you mentioned is, as a product manager, you were really driven by data. And I think communities, I think that's sometimes, maybe I'm just speaking for myself here, but sometimes the hard part or the pain point to really prove with data what you're doing and then get other people to buy in. But when, as we were former colleagues, like I saw you utilize that really well. You always kind of looked at data and then you would use that to push your ideas. So I think that's, something that's really nice, and just to point out. So yeah, with all of that said, are there any like initiatives that you can think of that you did? Just I guess just because like some of the talk is a little bit vague, so maybe to give people something like more concrete, some initiatives that you've done either as a community manager or as a product manager. But I think what's interesting too is to like talk about the links.
Yeah. So I think I usually I speak a lot about my past. I think all my friends, they hear a lot about my work because I'm just really I'm very passionate about everything I do professionally. And so I think one of the projects that like everyone heard too much about in the past, it was the Turtle Squad. So I would like to, maybe I can use that as an example of the initiative. So this is at the times of Udacity. So just to give you context, so at Udacity, me, Joanna, and two other colleagues, we were hired to run a Google scholarship project. So basically, Google sponsored 6,000 scholarships to people across EMEA region, and the goal was to another degree is a course that you do to learn software engineering from zero. So the goal was to teach. Of course, there were some people who had some coding experience before, but essentially the idea was you take somebody who wants to do a career change, and then we give them scholarship, and then we help them throughout the scholarship to finish the course. The course is they learn by themselves, from the online platform. There's theory, there's quizzes, and then they have to submit projects. And then you finish the course once you submitted like all the projects that were required. And there was 6,000 people in the community for community managers, and our the OKR that we received from higher ups was to get 50% completion rate, because that was Google kind of required that. And I don't know, like I work in online education for many years, and that's like impossible, 50% completion rate for something that you give people for free. And then for people who work full-time, and they have families, so you have somebody working full-time, I don't know, we had a guy who was like an animal behaviorist, so he was working with dogs all day long, and then he had to go home and then spend 4 or 5 hours every evening in front of the laptop trying to learn coding, and then also do the weekends. And there's deadlines, so it was quite challenging. So that was the challenge, so that's what we had to do. We had to make sure just people stay motivated and they finish. And then what was the greatest about this experience is that we could do anything we want. So Udacity let us experiment with whatever initiatives we want, as long as we kind of made our case that this is what we think is gonna make impact. They're like, okay, just try it and see what happens. So Turtle Squad was one of those initiatives. And so what we did was the problem was that you have this milestone. So every few I don't know, weeks or a month, there was the milestone. So there was enough like number of projects that people were supposed to submit. And then we saw at some point that there's a very, very big decrease coming up. So there's like less and less projects submitted. So it's like, okay, people are really struggling. So I'm going to talk about this initiative, also saying already kind of trying to kind of add in the product mindset that was also like, I think at that time, it's already like growing into me, so I'm going to try to also talk about this initiative and like using as a kind of thinking as a product manager initiative. So that was, as a PM, you have to, or a community manager, you have a problem, you define a problem, you have to find a solution and solve it. And, that's a simplified way to look at it. But actually defining the problem is very important to do it well, because you have to define a problem that it's like realistic to solve, or it's also the actual problem to solve, So what we did is, so the problem we defined was, okay, people are behind with submitting their projects. And then the way to do it as a PM, as a product manager, and this is how we did as well, you run the discovery, means like you are really diving deeply into your project, the problem, to really understand all the like nuance around the problem and all the flavors of it, So what we did, and also to learn more about maybe, the like put yourself in the shoes of the user. So this is what we actually did. We went everywhere. So we talked to people in headquarters in Udacity in Silicon Valley, some experts on the like learning and adult learning, and they also, that's how, for example, where I learned what the intrinsic motivation is. So we got in touch with this expert, and then she would like sometimes consult us on this topic. Then we were, because the community live on Slack, so we would really get like really active on Slack, trying to read, okay, what's happening in this channel. Every single channel was like observed by us, just to see what people are talking about. Then also we looked on the data, but it's more about we kind of try to kind of find patterns and some build correlations between, the dropout rate and also maybe the situation of the learner, maybe, the lifestyle. So we saw, for example, a lot of people who are struggling is the people, exactly what the example I mentioned before. So somebody working full-time, coming from completely different profession, and maybe not having anyone in their circle who is, working with the software, so somebody completely different world. So then we tried also to kind of build a very detailed persona of that will solve the problem for. And then we also had some, I don't know how we called them back then. I know it's called like brand ambassador in marketing world. So basically, these like super users, who were very, very active and close to community. And we got closer to them. We had one colleague, Marat, and Marat love in-person events. I was not really into it. So I was always just like measuring everything. And Marat would like go out there, travel to Munich, talk to these people, go to events, and then try to see what people are talking about with each other, So this is how we grew our kind of source of information, I would say. And then the next step will be, once we gather all of this, we came up with a set of ideas. So, we kind of come up with ideas for like solutions that we would implement. So this is also what product manager would do. And then we, I think back then we didn't really like normally what you would do is come up with a set of solutions, and then you will try to kind of pick one that is going to bring, I mean, you prioritize, your solutions, and you like, and then, there's different ways to prioritize solutions. I can talk about later. Probably it's too boring for you, but the simplest way is you choose a solution that is the easiest to implement and will bring the biggest impact. There was different solutions that we came up with. We were like, oh, maybe we will like break down the community into small groups. Then we're gonna send them like more, targeted newsletters, maybe like push more reminders about deadlines. But then Miriam, the expert, told us, no, people don't like to be pushed about deadlines. They know what the deadline is, that's not the problem. And then we came up with one solution that was actually also, we just like stumbled on this Turtle Squad Slack channel one day, when we were doing our vetting the channels. And then we saw there's this group of people, very small group back then, we'll just like meet there every day, and they will start the day saying like, yeah, I'm a slow turtle. Today I'm behind. I was supposed to submit my project yesterday, but I got stuck, and then I got demotivated. Maybe I'm not built for this. And then people will respond to him like, yeah, no, you can do it. I was also stuck and I'm behind, but maybe we should do this together. Maybe let's just like try to meet, online, and then do it together, because I'm also struggling, blah, blah, blah. So you had this community, like slowly, like supporting each other, and then, and they call themselves turtles. And then we're like, maybe that's a low hanging fruit. And basically what we did, we decided, or the idea was to turn something negative, because that was a channel for people to complain, actually, that just made people support each other. We thought, okay, that's a great opportunity. And that's what we did. So we turned something negative into something positive. And what we did, we just basically, we just joined the channel, and we started also joining this positive kind of wave of communications. We started saying, we just started motivating people a little bit, not too much. So then they still feel like that is like a private space for them. And then we basically started kind of leveraging this amazing community, like a sub-community, and the newsletters and our communication and like everything we did. We also had this simple Google site that we use for announcing important things. So basically we grew things, like we kind of like, I always compare it like it was like a small fire that was burning, and then we just like added more wood as community managers, and then it just like spread everywhere. And so at some point it became cool to be a turtle, and people would put like a turtle emoji in their like Slack handles, so to show that they belong to the turtle squad. And then we had, but also like it was like a both way movement, because we also asked people in headquarters in Udacity, our VP of scholarships would like send photos of him posing with like a stuffed turtle in the toy store, and they say like, yeah, turtles, like we root for you. And even there was like a motto of the Turtle Squad, which was slow is better than no. So it was like, even to me and Joanna, they sent us at some point like a computer mouse in the shape of a turtle. So it was just like, it was just fantastic initiative. But yeah, so I'm just like giving an example of, how we kind of implemented or like run something that was, we basically like the problem was solved, because then at the end, after we finished the scholarship project. So at the end, we didn't get to 50%, we got like 43%, which is like still insane. And the thing was that we ran kind of exit survey at the end of the scholarship, and it came up that almost every third person who finished the course and the scholarship was actually at some point part of the Turtle Squad, so for us it was like, cannot ask for more, and so I would say like this is kind of maybe the initiative that was kind of like most profound for me, but also I feel like when I look back, like a lot of things that I did kind of intuitively, then, I do now as a product manager,
Yeah, that's great. I mean, I think, I love that story. Hopefully you guys were able to follow that a little bit, and maybe you've had something in your own community happen, like especially with like the cute little inside jokes, and just really like figuring out ways to swoop in on those opportunities. One thing you mentioned was after you did like all the discovery was that you had, or we had, because I guess I was a part of this too, a list of different ideas we had, and then we had to prioritize. So I think talking about experimentation and how that's also like very important as a product manager. The only way, I mean, sometimes you have an idea because maybe you have data behind it, but if this is your first community and you're brand new, sometimes you have no idea which one's going to work. So you really have to try and see what sticks. And I think, that's also something really great to get from a product, right? Because that's like part of your mindset.
Yeah, for sure. And I think people shouldn't be scared to experiment. I think we are, at least I remember that was the mindset I had at the beginning. I was like, not sure, so I would like block the initiative before I even run it, before I even gave it a chance, because I was already assuming, it's not going to work out. But like, you never know, that's the point of experimenting.
Yeah. Cool. Okay. So on to the next question. How, as a community manager, can you talk to product to get what you want? So a lot of us, have to work cross-functionally, and sometimes I think, people as in a community manager role might have had the experience where they didn't have the right vocabulary, or maybe you get shut down when you're trying to push something forward. So what would be your suggestion of, how you can talk to product as a community person?
Yes, I love that question. Great question. I wish I knew some of those things, like back in the days when I was working as a community manager. Because I remember very, very well how it was for me when I was a community manager and how much manual work I had to do. I remember, I think the first project we did, like back 2014, when I was working for this very small edtech startup, where we were renting a platform for running MOOCs, massive open online courses like Coursera does. And we would rent this platform for big corporate clients like telecom, and we would then run a community, like an event or course there on it for them. And we had to really, really be on top of everything and make sure everyone is informed. And how many manually, like how many messages I had to like send to people, it's insane, just like copy paste, because there was no feature to write one message, like send one message to, like, I don't know, 100 people, it was like copy paste, and and of course we asked the tech team very often to, like, maybe there's a way to do it differently and maybe they can build it. And then they were always we were always hear this mumbo jumbo of some tech talk, and we were like, okay, yeah, I guess it's impossible. We don't really understand what they told us, but it sounds like it's impossible. So we're just going to end up copy pasting stuff and just, spend a lot of time on manual work that we actually could use for the creative work, So now I know that. I wish I knew that before. But so I would say I have like three pieces. So now from the perspective of a community manager, product manager, I would say there's like three pieces of advice I could give to community managers that work with product teams, or anyone really working with product with like tech teams. So if you're like not in tech team, but you want something from them, or you have idea for the feature that you think it's going to help and it's going to solve a lot of issues for the users or for the business. So I have like three pieces of advice. First of all, and this is also all just based on my experience, really. First of all, I would say when you have an idea, because this is what I really experience all the time. People come to me, and as a product manager, you get feature requests like on breakfast every single day, because it comes from all the departments in the company. It comes from your own team. It comes from the leadership, So feature requests are all daily bread. And even if you get interviews as a product manager, they often ask you in the job interview, like, how do you manage the requests from the stakeholders, because it's a very big topic. And so if you deal with this on a daily basis, at some point as a product manager, you become, you get this kind of mindset that if you just start hearing somebody talking about new feature and you're already like give up and you're like, okay, I cannot listen to this. You know, it's not because we don't want to do it. It's just like, it's too much for us. And but what would work actually, and that's the feedback I always give to my stakeholders, and that worked well for me, is basically don't come to the tech teams with the feature request, but actually tell them what the problems are, you know? So what problem this feature is supposed to solve, because, you know, we always start thinking about anything starting from the problem. You know, this is point number one. We'll never skip to the solution. You know, we always want to be very, very clear about the problem we're solving. So if you come to us with the problem that you know of and you have data to support this problem, you don't say, that also happened to me in the past a lot, when I had online learning platform I was building, and I had some teachers coming to me saying, yeah, our students complain a lot about this and this and that, and our students said actually they would appreciate having this and this feature. It's going to help them. I wish I knew back then, and then I learned a hard way, because sometimes we would just be like, okay, if students say that, we're just going to do it for them. And then we learned, okay, actually it was 2 students out of 100 that said that, you know. So that was the hard way. We learned also to, you know, to kind of filter out the actual information we need. So if you really want to get your your problem solved, first come to the tech team, say what's the problem that you noticed or you found out or you observed, and then come up with the actual data to back up the problem. So it's either, you know, you give the percentage. If you say, okay, users say this and that, okay, what's the percentage of the users complaining about this? Ideally, also come up with the actual testimonials, the actual user statements, because, you know, the raw data, and it comes also to the user kind of testimonials, is something that we really will work with. And the more interpreted the data is, it's the less we're gonna, you know, be open to it, you know, because it's always, you know, the more repetition there is, there's the problem itself maybe becomes a bit more biased, you know. So I would say that would be my first thing. And then second, this is also something that I did in the past a lot. So once we clarify the problem and we're like, okay, this is the roadmap, this is our plan for this quarter, the problems that we're solving, and then there's a lot of brainstorming happening. And I always invite everyone to brainstorming sessions. So I'm always I'm always trying to be very open for the brainstorming sessions about the, you know, solutions for the problems, because I feel like, why not? You know, anyone can come up with an idea. Let's see, okay, which idea we choose at the end, but all ideas are welcome. So, and I also tend to invite a lot of people from outside the technical team for those brainstorming sessions, but also it's important for them to have the right mindset in the sessions. So not to be like, oh, I'm going to push for this idea because it's my idea, and if the tech team doesn't go with this idea, it's because, you know, I'm not in the part of the team, and that's why they didn't select it. I've seen a lot of people taking stuff personally, you know, so it's important to have this also mindset, just not take things personally, and the best idea is going to be the idea we're going to take, and it's regardless of who came up with. So the idea is going to defend itself if it's good, you know. And then the third thing will be, I think also it comes back to what I said initially about just being very curious and asking questions. So, for example, if you come to a product team or tech team and you communicate an issue, so you did your homework, so you found the problem, you define the problem, you bring all the data, and then you hear that it's, you know, they will put it in the roadmap and they put it on the backlog and the roadmap is already full for the year, blah, blah, blah. So just ask what's on the roadmap? Why is it there? How are the decisions made to put things on the roadmap? You know, they will tell you. If a product manager is a good product manager, they'll be happy to hear these questions because that's their work. So they'll be happy to talk about it, you know, and they'll be happy somebody cares, you know, about this, because it's a lonely job at the end. So I would say, yeah, that's how I would these are the pieces of advice I would give to community managers working with tech teams, but I would say anyone really working with tech teams in the organization. But also I think it's important to keep in mind that especially for community managers that are part of, you know, companies that are having product teams that are building software and then need input from the community teams, you have what product really wants to hear and doesn't have enough information on is the users, because product cares about the users most, right? And there's so much we can find in data and all that, but the community managers are the ones actually talking to the users. And this is the pure goal for us, you know, hearing about users' struggles, but also what users find happy, what excites them, what motivates them, what inspires them. we will never have enough of this information, and if I could, I'll talk to my users on a daily basis, half a day, if I could, but I never have time for it. So, and this is what I believe it's really, really valuable, kind of strength and big aspect of community managers work that I think doesn't also get enough kind of love and credit and recognition. So that would be my
Definitely. And I think that you bring up some really good points of like, make sure, because it's like you talk to the user, how they feel, you get a sense of like what people are feeling, but maybe you don't have that data. And then you go to your product manager and you're like, I think we really need to do this. And then you get the reply, no. So, which is understandable because you have to prioritize, right? So I think what you mentioned of really trying to figure out what the problem is and having some kind of data to back it up. So what do you think, like, as a if a community manager came to you with like their problem and they had, what kind of data would be compelling to you to be like, okay, I think we need to like prioritize this?
No, it really depends on the problem you're saying. So I will maybe give you an example of what I mentioned before. Because I work in education. My community is the learners. So for me, it's always the easiest to talk about this as examples. When I hear, let's say the issue we see on the platform and the data we have access to as a tech team is that people don't. Let's say, I'm going to give these examples, quizzes. There's very often on the learning platforms, you have self-assessment quizzes. It's a quiz you can do by yourself to assess how you're doing and how you're covering the subject. So we had a lot of issues with the self-assessment quizzes, so people were just like not doing them. Or they would start a quiz and then just drop out after the first question. One question, there's like 15 questions. So we can find as much as we want about what they do in the software, so we can see what they're doing or what they're not doing when they stop engaging with the product, but we don't know why. And why, so when it comes to data that community managers can give us as like an insight in the problem, let's say you can do some testing or some interviews, and you come to us and like we talk to, let's say, I don't know, 15% of the students, and then they told us about like this is their pain points, and then you summarize the pain points, and then you also like as a appendix you add also the actual statements of what students said. That's already data for me, because I can read the summary, and then I can see the actual examples of what people said. So that's maybe one thing. So it's more about getting into this like a fluffy, warm, like a bubbly aspect of their experience that I just don't have access to. So at the end, it's really what user says, but I just need to hear how many of them, for example, how many did you talk to, and how many responded, what did they say, so I'll say that's kind of data.
Cool. Yeah. Thanks a lot. I think that's really useful. Also, like the thing you mentioned too, is try to get yourself invited to those brainstorming sessions. So if you can be, as a community manager, like a reliable source of information, back it up with data, and also come in as a somewhat neutral party. Like if you can get invited to those meetings, I think that's really helpful for your community, it sounds like. And also, aligning yourself to hopefully organizations understands community and is like also open to you. So great. Okay, so we have one more question before we will open it up. We have 2 questions in the chat right now. So this looks kind of the last question that I have for you. So okay, so no 2 communities are the same. So sometimes it can be challenging to give like a blanketed statement of like, how do you build or design or strategize your community? What programs should you implement, even though there are some kind of like frameworks that you can use. But do you have maybe like 1 or 2 pieces of advice for community managers to use product management approaches in designing communities? So like figuring out like what the community is going to look like, anything from like, what technology it would live on to what programs that you would like to run.
Yeah, that's a tricky question. I think also it really depends, but I think it comes back to like really what I mentioned before about knowing your users, because and knowing really well who are you designing for and what problems are you solving for them. I think this is kind of, you can repeat that, like, or it's like it's shared struggle, I think, for community managers and product managers, like really knowing your people, and also like having a sense of like when there's some shifts happening in the community or your user base, So I would say this is also something that it's important to keep in mind and always track, because at the end, what you implemented as a product manager in terms of features or initiatives you ask or campaigns you run as a community manager, this is like a next step, But I think once you have like a very, very stable ground when it comes to what you know about your users, and also how well you research, so how well you do, we call it product discovery, but it's basically, like all the research that you do, all the, sorry, my dog, like, you see the competition, what the competition is doing, what other tools maybe are out there, like in what spaces your community exists, and then why, what are best practices, for this kind of communities. I think this is kind of the, this is also kind of essential. So I would say like making, like having like a very, very stable and firm ground. I think that the more information you get at the beginning, like the better outcome will be at the end, So maybe that's something.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Okay, cool. Great. Yeah. So, okay, we can open this up in the chat. Maybe Jen, do you want to pop in here? Jen is the other host of this chapter. So she's been collecting some of the questions. I think actually one of them from Amy, you might have answered, but yeah, we can get into it. Jen, are you out there? Here she is.
Hi. Hello, everyone. Mm-hmm. Yes, thanks, Magda, for all of this valuable input and information. Excuse me. But yes, Amy did have a question early on in the session. I don't know if, Amy, you would like to come on and share it, or if not, I can also read it. Her question was, have you got experience with getting a community active again? And if so, what are your tips?
Yeah, so I think, as I mentioned before, so I usually work with mostly B2B, so the community already comes, so the client comes with their own community, so I don't have to really, if you need somebody to, let's say you have a community of, I don't know, 1,000 people and you need to go to 30,000 people in like 3 months, probably I'm not your go-to person. But so I have more experience with, B2B, so the communities that you already have, and they're just maybe disengaged, or you need, I don't know, create more brand awareness, but in the community that already exists, so I'm not really experienced with like getting like building communities from given number to another.
Maybe other people in the chat could give you some tips, Amy, or feel free to reach out to us afterwards. We'd be happy to chat with you in the Slack community about it. I had a question. My question was, can you share insights on creating a seamless user experience within the community and how this parallels product design principles?
I love that question, but it sounds a bit generic. So can you repeat again? Tips on creating seamless user experience?
And how this parallels product design. Sorry, I'm recovering from a cold.
Oh my God, I don't know. I mean, well, I'm not sure if that's a question for a product manager or community manager, really, because it sounds like it's more like about the UX related question. But I would say, from my perspective, what I always did as a community manager and as a product manager is just do a lot of testing as in the product itself. So I always do after I when you have mock-ups, or prototypes as a designer. I mean, even if you don't, I always try to start like repeat the user journey from my point of view. So like put myself in the shoes of the user and start the journey with the user. So let's say there's like a sign up button for initiative. So I sign up and then it's like click, go through the whole experience, and then I track how I feel on every single step. So I always make notes on every stage. Like I make basically a note in every screen for myself, on someone side, seeing, okay, how I'm feeling about this step. Is it clear for me how to get to next step? And but I think it's very important to like kind of monitor how you feel as you go for the product or as a campaign or whatever. So I think this is what I would do, and that's what I normally do. Track your feeling, and then how easy it is for you to get from one step to another, basically. And then if I see some pain points or some bottlenecks, then of course I would like dive deeper, and maybe then I will try to ask other people to actually repeat this, and then do the same kind of the same framework I used, just to hear from them how they feel on every single screen, of the user journey, and then see if my perspective and their perspective overlaps, So that would be my take on it.
Cool. Yeah, I think that's also really important to like validate your own assumptions with the group as well, because you might come in with certain ideas or feelings, based on many different criteria, and so yeah, validating it with the other members of the community is, I think, really a great way to go.
Yeah, and then Mitch Seth wrote, I like the point around identifying problems using data. Communities can be so different that it's not straightforward getting this data from out-of-the-box analytics tools. In my community, I have had to manually build a data set and dashboard that helps diagnose the problems. Wow.
I also feel there's a lot of manual work in what community managers do, because at least that was my experience. You need your things going, and you don't have so much support in terms of the resources that you can get. And yeah, I think we've all been there, and I think that's also why it's important to have such communities like CMX, when you can actually like share best practices of like how to get things done. I remember we spent a lot of time on Airtable as well, like sharing tips on like how to leverage Airtable to get what to achieve your goals, and maybe try to get enough information, in a seamless way. So yeah, I was there as well. So, but yeah, it's problems. Identifying right problems is the thing.
Mm-hmm.
Any more questions? Oh, I see. Sorry if I mispronounced your name, Stamatella. I have the same question with Amy, and I'm curious if there are any resources on that topic that you could share with us. There are plenty of resources that CMX has written on their blog, as well as the community club from ComSOAR. They have a lot of articles written about how to re-engage your community. So those are good resources to go to. As well, if you're part of the Slack channel for CMX, you can search within there. There's so much information within those channels. And if you are there, you can also just send Joanna or myself a message, and we'd be happy to guide you to get those resources.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, in terms of also other resources, like there's a lot of podcasts out right now. One that I listen to is called In Before the Lock, which I have found to be really useful, as well as there's a newsletters as well too. David Spinks has a newsletter. He created CMX. There's also another great newsletter that I think has been around for a couple of years. It's called Led by Community. That's also another great European-based newsletter. So I think if you look for these things out on the internet, it'll just take you down a rabbit hole of lots of different ideas that you could potentially have on how to re-engage your community.
Yeah, I can also give a actually tip. Oh, sorry, my dog. I would also recommend actually trying to kind of follow the best practices that other successful kind of community managers or marketing teams did. And one of them could be Notion. How Notion built the brand awareness of their product. I think everyone knows about Notion. And I was listening to podcasts recently, about the story. And then if you Google it, actually, if you Google like example marketing campaigns and community engagement campaigns that Notion did, like there's plenty of resources out there, So just kind of following and trying to learn how others succeeded in this area. I think it's also like a fast way, to learn how to build your community, because Notion, they grew their community crazy fast. Like I'm still impressed by it.
Lawrence has a question. For someone getting into community management, what tools of showing or handling data and what data does a community manager collect?
I mean, that really depends on what community you have and what the goals are for the community, you know, but so I can only talk about my perspective and my experience, which is, you know, the learning community. So what usually we collected as at the beginning as a community manager, I started that, and then, you know, as a PM, you also, of course, just build on top of that would be, you know, and then really depends on also like where your community really lives, you know, because I had communities that were living on our platform, you know, so for me it was very like actually easy. My community was not somewhere on TikTok or somewhere on Instagram, or, you know, they were on our platform, so I could just track whatever I wanted about them, really, you know. So I would say it's a bit, you know, for me it's a bit different to answer the question, I guess. So also it depends on your specific case, you know, but I don't know. There's like plenty of like external tools. I know like Mixpanel is a good tool. I mean, I use it for product management, but for tracking data in Mixpanel. But I don't know if that actually works for with like, because this is also for like, you know, tracking stuff that is in your product. But if the community exists somewhere else, then honestly, I don't have any advice to share there, because I just don't have experience with this kind of community management.
Thank you. Can you hear me? There's a lag, I think. Okay, sorry. Yes, and again, there's a lot of resources that you can find online that tells you, oh, what are your metrics that you need to measure in terms of the type of community you have. So for example, if you go back to David Spanks and his spaces models, you'll see each of the types of community you have measure different types of metrics. So that's what Magda was saying, how it's different for every community. And then Hannah comments here, another best practice on the data topic. In our team, it helped to shift the responsibility for the customer data to community. This allows us to control evaluations and be the direct touch point of tech for building dashboards in our needs. And thank you, Mitch, for sharing the Better Mode blog on the community-led growth. And Mitch also said, thanks for pointing out testing. It has worked great for my community, but I had to build this into the members' expectations by starting with an MVP and not a fully baked community. So yeah, thank you. Thank you, Stamatala. So sorry if I mispronounced this, but that's a pretty name. Any last words, Magda?
Guys, keep building, keep iterating. I love community management and I miss it every day.
We miss you too. Yeah, I think there really needs to be more product people out there who have deep knowledges, or like a deep knowledge base of community and how it can be super beneficial to a company's bottom line, because I think it's growing more and more, but I still, yeah, we probably all know this, that there's still some, you know, misunderstandings in how valuable a community can be. So yes, thank you, Magda. And okay, great. So yeah, we're at the time. So yeah, this event is recorded, so you can get it back on YouTube if you want to rewatch it. But yeah, thanks a lot for coming, everyone. And yeah, just reach out to Jen or I if you have any questions, or if you have a topic for maybe the next lunchtime talk. We would love to feature either anyone in the audience if they have something they want to talk about, or if there's a topic that you'd like us to cover. So yeah, we'll end it now. And it was great to meet all you guys. Thanks a lot.